Throughout the years, different regions of the world have been deprived of many different games that leave you scratching your head in retrospective confusion. As to why that might have been, well, it could be for a number of reasons. Licensing, market research, a lack of interest, even a publisher not having a worldwide scope, not possessing the ability to distribute outside of their own regions. Whatever the cause, we can at least be grateful that today these barriers are less and less common, and stuff from pretty much anywhere is now accessible. Back then though, even being aware that the games existed at all was sometimes really tricky. The Game Boy, for the most part, can be split up into three key regions: Japan, North America, and Europe. Obviously that's not entirely comprehensive, and there will always be others outside of those three, or even within them. Europe, for example, often had games that never left Germany or Scandinavia or whatever. For each of the main three regions, however, there are a collection of exclusive titles that were, for one reason or another, simply never released anywhere else. Next week, we'll explore a handful of European exclusives that you may not have seen before. Today, we're going to look at 10 amazing games that never left Japan, but probably should have. Chalvo 55. Never mind Japan, due to the developer suffering financial troubles, this game nearly didn't come out at all. That would have been a colossal shame because it's one of the most inventive puzzle platformers on the Game Boy. You have two forms, a robot who can push stuff but not jump, and a ball who can do nothing but jump. Skillful flicking between the two forms is what you'll need to find all the jewels and clear these stages. An absolute bounder, this is. Fushigi no Dungeon, Furai no Shiren GB, Tsuki Kagemura no Kaibatsu. If you thought the more famous Cave Noir was the only roguelite/dungeon crawler on the Game Boy, think again. Fushigi no Dungeon might have an absurdly long name, but it's actually Chunsoft's precursor to the Game Boy Advance title Pokémon Mystery Dungeon. If you're familiar with that, this should be right up your alley. Holy cow, that soundtrack as well. This could easily have made it onto last Friday's Awesome Soundtracks list. Ikare no Yusai 2. I've covered this in a full review already on the channel, where I somewhat bravely questioned whether it might be the best Japanese exclusive of them all. I don't know if that's true, but the sequel to Fortified Zone is one not to be missed for any shooter fan. No text to translate either, which is always a bonus. Keitai Denju Telefang Power and Speed versions. Fast forward to the sci-fi world of 2020. Oh shit, no, actually that's a terrible idea. Where everyone has a mobile phone, in which reside these creatures that you can collect and battle. You might, oddly, have actually played this before. Before ROM hacks and so on were super commonplace, this actually got roughly smushed into English and released as Pokémon Jade and Diamond. If you're intrigued, those counterfeit carts aren't that hard to find. Alternately, a much more impressive fan translation of this monster-raising adventure is nowadays available. If you're wanting a Pokémon-like experience, this is one of the best. Koto Battle Tengai no Moribito. Taking inspiration from Pokémon, as many early 2000s RPGs do, Alpha Dream's card-based creature battler explores the world of the Japanese spirits called yokai. Perhaps a tricky one to get into because there's as yet no English translation, but if you can figure it out, you'll be well rewarded. Magical Chase GB, Minerai Mahotsukai Kenja no Tane e. More famous as a PC Engine title, and absurdly expensive at that, Magical Chase did actually find its way onto the Game Boy Color in 2000. As luscious and charming as its console counterpart, this won't cost you an arm and a leg at least, maybe a thumb or two, simply because you won't want to stop playing it. Miracle Adventure of E-Sparks. A phenomenal action platformer where you play as the brave knight Perivron, battling through 6 stunningly designed, inventive stages using your powerful sword. Amazing atmosphere and gripping, intuitive gameplay. And an excellent soundtrack to boot. This was a populated genre on the Game Boy for sure, and the mecha thing wasn't nearly as popular outside of Japan. But even so, I'd thoroughly recommend this one. Mobile Golf. Essentially Mario Golf GBC 2, this golfing RPG light adventure feels right at home on the Game Boy. It's a late one, coming out after the GBA had already surfaced, which may explain why the West never got it. You don't really need the text, so if you enjoy sports or skill games with a more interesting twist, give it a whack. Nubo. Unless you're familiar with Japanese sugary treats, there's no way you'll know who Nubo is. This mascot for a confectionery company called Morinaga doesn't really say anything, but really all you need to know is that Nubo is a purely selfless being who just wants to help out. A really sweet little puzzle adventure, not in the confectionery sense, that could warm the cockles of even the steeliest miser out there. Heckin' adorable. Samurai Kid. Of all the games on this list, this one is perhaps the most confounding. Koei aren't a small publishing house by any stretch, and the Game Boy Color library positively aches for something like this to take the edge off all the miserable cartoon-based platformers that were shoveled onto shelves to trick unsuspecting kids like me. Brilliant slashing combat, tricky platforming, and a healthy dose of puzzling, Samurai Kid is also pretty tasty to look at. A real shame we didn't get this.